This is a series that will examine every single season played by the Babe. I determined that if the Rookie of the Year award had been around in 1915, Ruth would have easily won that award. Then I examined the 1916 season and determined that he would have barely, just barely, beat Walter Johnson for the Cy Young Award. This video examines the 1916 World Series. The Red Sox had won the World Series in 15, and they found themselves back here again the following season, this time to face the Brooklyn Robins, also known as the Brooklyn Dodgers. Ruth would have one of the greatest starts in World Series history. Our question today is, if the World Series MVP award had been around back then, would Ruth have won it? The Red Sox went on to win this series 4-1, with Ruth pitching Game 2. Red Sox hurler Ernie Shore pitched Game 1 on 4 days rest, and the Red Sox took a 1-0 lead in the series. The Sox then turned to Ruth for Game 2, who was also pitching on 4 days rest. The third hitter of the day hit an inside-the-park home run, but that was all the Robins would get off Ruth on this day. He finished with 13 1/3 scoreless innings. In the end, he collected a win, pitched 14 innings, gave up 6 hits, and even drove in the game-tying run in the third inning. If there had been an MVP award, Ruth would have definitely been up for consideration. After looking at the box score for each game, and after reading as many articles as I could possibly find online, I determined that these 4 guys right here would have all been candidates for the MVP of the World Series. There were 2 pitchers who stood out. One was the Babe, and the other was Ernie Shore, who won games 1 and 5. And then there were 2 hitters who stood out, Duffy Lewis and Larry Gardner. Let's talk about Larry Gardner. He was only 3 for 17 in the series, hitting a whopping 176 at the plate. Nevertheless, he had 2 home runs with 6 RBIs, and he had an RBI in 4 of the 5 games. Ordinarily, I might just dismiss a hitter who only hit 176 in the series, but this was the dead ball era, and he did hit 2 home runs. I looked at all of the MVP award winners dating all the way back to 1955, and there were 43 position players who have won the World Series MVP. None of them hit below 286. With that in mind, we're going to dismiss Larry Gardner as a candidate for this award. When I floated these names by a few of my friends, one of them looked at Duffy Lewis's numbers and said, well, you can't dismiss that OPS. When I think about a position player who might have won the MVP in the World Series, I normally think of a guy who was just tearing it up at the plate, like maybe he hit over 400 or he hit 3 or 4 home runs. In Lewis's case, he didn't do either one of those. But again, this is the dead ball era, and his numbers do look good, so I wanted to give him a fair shake. Because there's not an MVP award winner during the dead ball era to compare Lewis to, I started comparing him to the other 43 position players who had won the award. And because Lewis's numbers aren't exactly eye-popping, they're good, but they're not great, I was looking to see if there was a comp for a player who had, good numbers but not great numbers, or even lesser numbers than what Lewis had. What I discovered was there were 12 winners who actually hit under 353. Here are those 12 players, and right away, we're going to toss 3 of them right out of this list, because for some insane reason in 1981, they gave this award to 3 players. And that's not going to really help us because we're looking for a good comp for Lewis, as we want to give this award to the outstanding player of the series, not 3 of them. With the field now narrowed to 9, we're going to immediately eliminate 2 more players in Tennis and Freeman, as they both popped 4 home runs and had OPSs over 1,300. They're just not good comps for what Lewis did. And this group of 3, which includes Corey Seager, I just don't think they're good comps either, so we're going to toss them out. And finally, I'm going to eliminate David Freese from this list. His Game 6 heroics were enough alone to win this award. I'm just not sure he's a good comp either. That leaves us with 3 players who hit below Lewis's mark of 353 who may provide good comps. We're going to put these guys to the side for a moment, and we'll come right back to them. Of the 43 position players who won the MVP, only 9 had an OPS under Lewis. I wanted to take a look at them as well. Ron Cey, one of the 3 Dodgers who won the MVP award in 1981, is also on this list. So once again, I'm eliminating him. I'm also going to toss Bucky Dent. He hit .417, drove in 7 runs. Not a good comp for Lewis. So this is who we're left with. The 4 guys who hit below Lewis's 353 mark, and also the players who are underneath his OPS numbers. In Reggie Jackson and Darrell Porter, we have 2 players who are on both lists. It makes me wonder if there'll be good comparisons for Lewis. While this list has been reduced to 8, you'll notice that Reggie Jackson is one of 4 who had big moments in Game 7. Reggie Jackson had a game-winning 2-run homer. Pete Rose had a game-tying single in the 7th. Ray Knight had 3 hits and a 7th-inning home run. And Ben Zobrist had a 10th-inning double that put the Cubs ahead. While each of them had a nice series, the real point here is that each one of these guys came up clutch in the 7th game of the World Series, and they just don't provide a good comp for what Lewis did. And now we're down to 4. First, let's think about Frank Robinson. He hit 2 home runs, has a really high OPS, and while the Orioles didn't go 7 games, Robinson hit the game-winning home run in Game 4 that led the Orioles to a sweep. Next, we've got Darryl Porter. And if there's anyone who has worse numbers than Lewis's, it's definitely Porter's. But here's what he did in the series. He tied Game 2 with a 2-run double, which ultimately helped the Cardinals tie the series 1-1. And in Game 7, he had a big 8th inning hit that helped extend the Cardinals' lead to 5-3. He was also a catcher who threw out 2 base runners, and that might have influenced voters as well. David Eckstein's numbers don't exactly look earth-shattering either, but here's what he did in Game 5 when they eliminated the Tigers. He put the Cardinals on board first with an RBI in the 2nd inning, and then he singled and scored in the 7th to pad their lead to 4-2. Ultimately, Eckstein drove in the winning run in the 4th inning. And here's what Salvador Perez did. He added an insurance run, extending the Royals' lead to 5-3 in the 8th inning of a Game 4 victory, and he started a 5-run 12th inning rally with a single to win Game 5 and the series for the Royals. And like Porter, he was also a catcher who threw out a couple base runners. And here's what Duffy Lewis did. In Game 1, he drove in a run in a 6-5 victory. In Game 2, he sacrificed the runner into scoring position that eventually scored the winning run in the 14th inning. In Game 4, he had 2 hits and 2 runs and a 6-2 win. And in Game 5, he had 2 more hits and a run and a 4-1 victory that secured the series. But in the end, Lewis just didn't have any real big moments in the series. And while his numbers are really good, he had an average over 350, on-base percentage over 400, OPS over 1,000. They're just not great when you think in terms of a World Series MVP, unless there's some heroic moments to go along with those numbers. So we're going to have to eliminate Duffy Lewis from this list. So while I've tried to give Duffy Lewis a fair chance at winning this award, I just don't think he deserves it. So we're left with 2 starting pitchers. Shore won Game 1, Ruth won Game 2, and Shore won Game 5 to finish out the series. If Ruth hadn't tossed a 14-inning masterpiece, I wouldn't even be having this discussion, but the fact of the matter is, he did. But do Ruth's efforts justify giving him the award over Ernie Shore, who won both the opening game and the series-clinching game? Here's what I discovered. Of the 25 starting pitchers who have won the World Series Most Valuable Player Award, all 25 started at least 2 games in the series, and 21 of them won at least 2 games. So I looked at the 4 pitchers who started 2 games, but only won 1. Curt Schilling won the award in 2001 when he started 3 games. He fanned 26 and 21 in the 3rd innings. And in 2003, Josh Beckett won the award, and he put up equally astounding numbers as Schilling. Nobody would question that both of these guys deserve the MVP award. And in 2008, Cole Hamels won the award. His numbers weren't as good as Schilling's or Beckett's, but voters decided they were good enough. And then there's Don Larson. He started Game 2, but he got pulled in the 2nd inning. He did not have a good day. He only gave up a hit, but he walked 4 batters and gave up 4 runs, noting none of those runs were earned. He came back in Game 5, and we know what happened. He pitched the only perfect game in World Series history, striking out 7 along the way. His great start earned him the MVP award, but was Ruth's effort enough to do the same? Well, his 14-inning complete game is still a World Series record, but here's why context matters. Ruth was matched up against another lefty named Sherry Smith, and the box score for the two looks very similar. While Ruth only gave up 6 hits over 14 innings, Sherry only gave up 7 hits over 13 and a third. In fact, one writer for the Boston Globe named Grantland Rice said that Smith actually outpitched Ruth on this day. The box score seems to say something differently. Smith walked 6 guys, Ruth only walked 3. Ruth had double the strikeouts, and more importantly, Ruth only gave up 1 run. And that inside the Parker that occurred in the 1st inning only happened because outfielders Harry Hooper and Tilly Walker both slipped, enabling Myers to round the bases. But here's the point. Because Sherry Smith pitched so well, Ruth's remarkable effort didn't look quite as remarkable to the people who actually watched the game. In fact, the next day, the Boston Globe said that the real hero of the game was a pinch hitter named Del Gaynor. It was Gaynor's 14th inning pinch hit single that made Ruth a winner. The Boston Globe said, Del Gaynor is a real World Series hero. And that statement probably gives us enough background to make a decision about this MVP vote. While Ruth's game was remarkable, Sherry Gary Smith also pitched a great game, and Dell Gaynor made the most of his one plate appearance in this World Series. So we're going to give the World Series MVP award to pitcher Ernie Shore, who won 2 games in this series. Shore was cruising along in Game 1, up by a score of 6-1 in the 9th inning, when he finally tired and gave up a couple more runs. And he completely dominated in Game 5, tossing a 3-hit shutout, making him a very deserving winner of the World Series Most Valuable Player Award. For Ruth's great effort in Game 2, we'll declare him as the old runner-up. Well, I hope you like this video, and I sure appreciate it when you like the video and when you subscribe to my channel.